Cast. I'm Aaron Schatz, editor-in-chief of Football Outsiders. It is Thursday, March 24th, 2022. I am joined, as always, by Mike Tanier and also today by Football Outsiders writer Rob Weintraub to talk some more about the unstoppable train that is the NFL offseason, not just free agency, but trades, including three big trades that have been made since last we did this show last Thursday. It's interesting. Free agency has actually slowed down this week. I'm a little surprised by how many free agents are still out there, but it feels like there's been a gigantic trade every single day.
Yes.
It's 1 o'clock. Have we had one today?
Yeah,
no, today. I keep waiting for Tom Brady's been traded to the Jets.
Baker Mayfield to the Buccaneers, man. That's the one we're looking for.
It's a big one, yeah.
Yeah, well, he's a better backup than Kyle Trask, that's for sure.
That's
so we're going to go through Mike's grades. Mike's walkthrough today did grades for free agency for all 32 teams so far. We'll go through the best and worst teams in a little bit. But first, let's just talk about these big trades that happened since we last did the show. And we'll start with the first one, which I think is the biggest one, which is Deshaun Watson. It's the biggest one in terms of both football and societal impact. And that is Deshaun Watson being traded from Houston to Cleveland for a large package of picks. Well, it was Deshaun Watson and a fifth rounder.
Yes, don't forget the
traded to Cleveland for 6 different draft picks. So
I heard it wasn't going to happen if not for that 5th round sweetener.
Yeah, you need to have that to make that trade equal. One interesting thing about it is it doesn't like suddenly refurbish Houston all of a sudden. Like I think 4 of the picks, maybe 5 of the picks were for 2023 and 2024.
Right.
But I don't know. Let's get your guys' take on, the rumors were that, Watson had this no trade clause and he could decide where he was going to go. And he had ruled out Cleveland and then Carolina, and it was going to be between New Orleans and Atlanta, which is where he's from. And then all of a sudden the word came down, he had reconsidered, and now he's in Cleveland. There was even video of him today in the building in Cleveland with a Browns jacket on. So this Deshaun Watson in orange is absolutely real. What do you guys think about the trade? Obviously, Rob, you're not a big fan of it as a Bengals fan. How do you feel about having Deshaun Watson in your division now?
Well, there's, as long as he gets suspended for the 88 games, which he should be, if we go by the Roethlisberger sliding scale, right? He had one accusation for 4 games, so with 22, just doing the math. Obviously, I don't feel great that the Browns got a much better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. Remains to be seen. I think the idea that all of a sudden they're in the Super Bowl just because they got Deshaun Watson is a little far-fetched, but it's just, I feel like the Bengals broke the Browns' brains. Boy, that was alliterative. A little bit, the idea that the Cincinnati kind of leapfrogged right over the Browns, who were the ones who were supposed to go to the Super Bowl last year. And not only didn't it happen and they kind of collapsed internally, but there was Cincinnati, cross-state rivals, on the cusp of the Lombardi Trophy. That really made them go even more all out than they were probably already kind of thinking internally that they wanted to do, and to not just trade all those picks, but to Bob Beamon the guaranteed money ever granted to another player, in this case, Aaron Rodgers. Remember him? I haven't talked about him in a while. Giving Deshaun $230 million guaranteed dollars. Obviously, that was the main reason that Watson decided all of a sudden to put Cleveland back into his plans and waive the no trade clause going to Cleveland. And forgetting about the hometown ties. So I feel like that's an awful lot to give to a player who knows what his availability will be, and really who knows how long it's going to be between games, that he's played. And even when he does come back after, let's say, a year and a half to a year and 3 quarters, finally getting on the field, this is not – I I think he's an outstanding quarterback, but let's not exactly put him just yet in the Mahomes, Rodgers, Brady class. He's not going to win him a title all by himself. And there's certain to be rust and a lot of getting to know the old teammates factor as well. Long term, though, if he does what they got him to do and win games and get him into the playoff mix every year, fans in Cleveland aren't going to care. The rest of America may or may not. We'll see what the attention span is. It's usually pretty small, so I don't have a lot of great great hopes and people not counting their success. But I know I won't. No matter what they do, it'll always have a black mark next to it because of this move. But even if they did it with Mayfield, I wouldn't be particularly fond of it anyway. So I'm the wrong guy to ask, perhaps.
The Browns are currently plus 175 to win the AFC East. I wouldn't touch that for the
to win the AFC North or to win the
AFC North. Excuse me, AFC North. Thank you.
North, yeah.
And meanwhile, another grand jury is being convened
exactly.
in a different county to investigate the claims against Deshaun Watson. So there's a little bit of a dissonance there between the expectations of the House and what we talk about on the field and what we're talking about off the field with this individual. And just to backtrack with the guaranteed money, pretty obviously that was what it was all about. The hometown love of the Atlanta Falcons and all of this stuff. They went to the Panthers and they asked the Panthers for that money, and the Panthers balked. They reneged at that point. And that's when the Panthers disappeared. I'm sure he wouldn't mind to play for his hometown team, etc. All of this was ultimately about the guaranteed money, especially for somebody who may be facing a suspension.
Yeah, it's interesting because you talked about, Rob, like how long will we remember? Will our memories last? I do worry that when guys have off-field difficulties having to do with sexual harassment, that we forget about it a little too easily.
Yeah.
The black mark, Tyreek Hill, we'll get to in a second, wasn't sexual harassment; it was domestic violence. But I still like we've all forgotten why it is that Kansas City was able to get him in the 5th round in the first place. Right. You have to keep reminding yourself of that and reminding yourself of that. And, I mean, I definitely felt like when the deal was made, like for all of us in the analytics world, at least, who sort of rooted for the Browns a little bit as the organization that carried our flag, there was this real deflating feeling of, oh my God, like we're this is the team that's going to do this, like,
yeah.
But somebody had to, and somebody was going to. He's just too good on the field for every team to have ignored him. It's a tragedy of the commons kind of thing, right? If the league, if every team had gotten together and said this guy can't play again, that's one thing. But
right.
As long as he was going to play again, you wanted him to play for you. If you want to win titles, you want the best quarterback possible.
And I think for me, I've kind of given up on the concept of consequences. Like the NFL providing consequences for these players, that should be the legal system. That should be the world.
Yeah, I agree with that, man.
Right.
But then there's a difference between no consequences and getting everything you want despite this. And that's the part that I trip over with Watson in this. It's like, oh, you did these things. These allegations are out there. They're credible. But here's more guaranteed money. Here's teams bending over backwards for you. And it's almost like a pendulum swings so far in the other direction. Not only are there no consequences, but you are now beyond Aaron Rodgers in terms of your unassailability of how we're going to treat you. And that's the part that digs in a little harder. I've gotten used to having to have a little bit of amnesia about Tyreek Hill, about some of these other guys, because we got to write about them every week. We can't trip over them every time we mention DVOA and say, oh, and here's a disclaimer. You can't do it. It's not really feasible. So I've had that amnesia for a while, but now it's like, oh God, this guy is like king of the NFL, despite all of these things that are going on around him.
Yeah, you can't bake it into the algorithm there to make the numbers factor in what the guy's evil past or evil doings may have been. And he can hand off to Kareem Hunt every now and again, which will be a nice little, felonious time.
Yeah. There's another guy who we all get amnesia about, but we have to put a little asterisk next to his name every time you think about it.
Right.
Yeah, and it's just amazing the way the NFL they changed the conversation, even as an executive with the Cowboys is getting dinged for the same sort of thing for keeping
ding
various other off-field things you want to turn the page on. In Calvin Ridley's gambling, we don't hear anything about that anymore, and the various other. Yeah, I mean, but it's what you have to do as a fan. I think that's my phone dinging.
Is that your phone?
That is my phone. Yes.
Get that baby on silent, Robert.
Angels are getting their wings, Zuzu. That's what's happening here.
That's Deshaun Watson checking in, saying, "How dare you talk to me? Don't you know I'm worth $230 million guaranteed dollars? Come on, you can't say these things to me about me." And further to Mike's point, that's what he is now. He's above it all. He's above the law. He's by the way that things are measured in the NFL among the players anyway. He who has the most guaranteed dollars, is the champ. And it doesn't matter what you've done, particularly off the field, unless you actually go to jail for it. It seems like so. It's really it makes it ever so much harder to root and watch the games and have that cognitive dissonance. But that's what we do for a living, so I guess we have to.
Coral Skipper says, as someone who adopted the Browns after the Rams left St. Louis because I went to college in Ohio, this makes it easy to drop the team. My fandom was not the strongest already, but just no.
Yeah.
And don't forget, if you are watching us live on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube, you can comment. We will respond to your comments and take your questions. If you're listening to us afterwards on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network, you should really be tuning into the live stream on YouTube or Twitch at 1 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays so that you can ask questions. Jim Schulte, we're going to get to Tyreek in a moment, says, you guys mentioning Tyreek Hill reminds me of the Bears hiring of Jason Poles at GM and never seeing any media member ask him about player characters such as Hill or Kansas City trading for Frank Clark. Yeah, it was interesting. Kansas City has Hill and Frank Clark, and yet they cut Kareem Hunt, but then Cleveland picked up, where teams make a stand on these things. It's almost like if you are the team that, if you're the team that has the player when he first gets caught doing something awful, you have to cut him.
Right.
But then any other team can pick him up and we all forget about it.
Yeah, because you can do, we're doing second chances, redemption. We have him seeing a counselor, who's like his coordinator or something like that.
There's only one place the line is drawn, and that's at Colin Kaepernick, obviously. That you can't do. Everything else, fair game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a response to that.
Just blowing up this stream, baby. We got nowhere else to go. Trades, free agency. Who cares about all this? We're getting into deep societal problems now.
And yes, Bill Houston is correct that the stand that teams make is predicated on how much evidence is made public and then picked up on by mainstream media.
Is there video or is it just, the agate type? That's basically what it boils down to.
Yep.
Yeah. Speaking of Rob saying that whoever has the most guaranteed money wins, let's talk about wide receivers. It's the Tyreek Hill trade, but actually the Devontae Adams trade was also since we last did this show.
Oh my God.
Right? That was Thursday night of last week.
I don't remember. Anymore. It's all blurred.
You sit down at 9:00 in the morning to start work and nothing's going on. And then all of a sudden within 3 hours we do Tyreek Hill talks are breaking down. Mm-hmm. Tyreek Hill is asked for a trade. Tyreek Hill is going to be traded to either the Miami Dolphins or the New York Jets. And then Tyreek Hill is traded to the Miami Dolphins. And it happened within about 3 hours.
Right.
That's what made it so amazing, as opposed to, everything else that's happened. At least there was some buzz and a little bit of speculation, some smoke around that fire. This really came out of nowhere, which, with cheetah-like speed, dare I say.
Yes.
The Devontae Adams thing came out of nowhere, too. I never would have expected that Las Vegas would be the team.
I don't know. There were talks about Carr and him wanting to get together. I grant you the actual trade came out of nowhere.
It makes more sense than the Hill and Miami thing. But
yeah. And, he had said that he wouldn't play on the franchise tag, and there was a little bit of bad blood between him and the front office. It didn't come as a complete right hook out of left field, so to speak.
But it was like this team obviously has one job. The Packers have one job, is to keep Aaron Rodgers happy. What is part of that job? Keep Devontae Adams happy. How do you do it? Restructure it any way possible, and they screwed it up.
Yeah.
That's the surprise for me, because with Kansas City, there's the feeling of we want to be in this every year. If we have to sacrifice a little in the short term to stay, so we're a top team in the long term every year, we have a long time with Mahomes, and we want to be near the top every year.
Yeah.
With Green Bay, the feeling is we got a year, maybe two.
Yes.
Win now.
Yes. Two very different, very similar things where the top receiver goes away. Two very different windows they should have been aiming for.
Right.
CO the Legend says, regarding the Adams trade, the Packers now have 2 first-round picks. Do you think there's a chance they take 2 receivers with those picks? And their plan is to give Rodgers 2 first-round receivers to try to win a Super Bowl with during the remainder of his contract.
I want them to draft no wide receivers in the first round. I want them to draft no wide receivers. I want to see what happens. I want to hear what Aaron Rodgers says on the Joe Rogan podcast the next day. The ground will shake here in New Jersey. It will be everywhere. I see the Legend on the draft show on Tuesday. I mocked 2 wide receivers to the Packers, and I kind of called it Aaron Rodgers fanfic. That I did it. I think they should. I think it's a reasonable thing to do. I can't imagine them doing it. And Derek Klassen and Thor Nystrom did not mock 2 receivers to them. They knocked 1 wide receiver and then an edge rusher.
I don't know. Is there a 240-pound running back they can draft instead? That's what they do.
Breece Hall.
I will say, given the depth of the wide receivers in this class, it's not. I mean, the odds that the receiver that gets drafted at the end of the first round is as good as Hill or Adams is tiny.
Right.
But the odds that receiver is a useful player are pretty good.
Oh, yeah. And they can get a dude in the first, dude in the second, who are good receivers in this draft.
Yeah. I mean, they might not be Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, but they'll be productive enough.
I've seen some arguments online that the Chiefs were eventually going to have to build the post-Tyreek Hill offense, given his age. So they might as well start it a year early rather than a year late.
Might as well give up. It's hard. So
that trade does feel a little bit like giving up. Kansas City has not. I mean, it's tough because I want to criticize them for not having a good offseason. But at the same time, the biggest criticism is the lack of depth on the defense, plus the Hill trade. But the Hill trade helps make up for the lack of depth. The idea is they have all these picks now. They'll take some defensive players and improve the defense.
Yeah, you can see the road forward with this. This makes sense. But to rewrite this as some sort of optimal decision that you take away one of the 3 or 4 best non-quarterbacks in the NFL and erase him and sort of take away that thing that made the Chiefs the Chiefs. Yeah. To say that, that's good because from a resource management standpoint, now you've got extra 3rd-round picks and all. It's a little. Yeah,
plus, it was the nature of the negotiations. It's apparently from the outside, it seems like Hill comes in and says, "I want more money guaranteed than Devontae Adams," and Kansas is like, "No, we're trading you." Whoa.
Well, I don't think it was that severe, but that was it. I think he dug in pretty hard.
They both did, and
the solution is you want to come to the table, do the extension with us. We'll pay for your age 32 year, 33 year.
We'll give you something in the back end, or we'll take care of you in another way. We're the guys who drafted you, and as we alluded to just before, we're the ones who took the PR hit for bringing you in and drafting you in the first place, and we made you basically. I mean, he'd be good anywhere, but with Mahomes, obviously that combination would not have been exactly the same anywhere else. It just feels like it was so. Just almost stubbornness on both sides, and just causes a trade that didn't have to happen. I mean,
again, you can see the logic of the Chiefs saying, "All right, this has gone too far. Let's pivot and let's go to the other solution."
Yeah, sure, you see it. It's just I just feel like, as you said, I think on Twitter, it's like the Beatles breaking up. It's kind of like, boy, you'd think that for something so special that they had and came together out of nowhere, they have tried a little bit harder to keep it together, but that's football, I guess.
CO the Legend says, are the Chiefs still a Super Bowl contender without Hill? I think yes. The defense doesn't look good, but as long as you have the best quarterback in the game, you are a Super Bowl contender. Less of one, but definitely one. They have the best tight end. They have the best quarterback.
AFC odds: Bills plus 330. Chiefs plus 550, Chargers plus 850, Broncos plus 850. So, they're still number 2 in the AFC. That's where I would rank them. The thing is, I would rank them very clearly number 2 in the AFC.
And also, they're definitely. I mean, the real winners of the Hill trade were the Buffalo Bills.
Yes.
Well,
and the Dolphins.
The rest of the AFC West too. I mean, and that's part of the reason why you don't. it's not like losing Hill in a vacuum makes them necessarily less of a Super Bowl contender, but the fact that everybody else around them improved and they at least take half a step backwards because of this doesn't help their chances either.
Bill Houston asks, optimal would have been the Chiefs re-signing Hill before free agency started. Well, he wasn't a free agent. Why don't more teams re-sign key free agents during the season before the market goes crazy? Right, Hill wanted an extension. He was not a free agent. But that is an interesting question about Adams, right? I mean, why did the Packers not try to re-sign Adams during the season? And my guess is that they did. Like sometimes players say, I'm not negotiating during the season.
Yep.
Sometimes they do negotiate, but they just don't come to an agreement during the season. I mean, there are extensions that get agreed on during the season. It does happen.
Over the last 2 years, the COVID shortened cap has made it hard to create those situations. So teams that like to do that couldn't necessarily plan to do that. That was part of the thing too.
And I think there's a certain feeling among general managers or league wide that you don't want to be at the top of the wide receiver market ever if you can avoid it, and B, because of the corollary is because of the huge raft of incoming wideouts that are provided by college football every year. It's really not good business to do that. So I think that factors in. Obviously, players like Hill and Adams are a little bit above that conversation, but I think that all weighs into it. Part of the reason you don't want to just give a guy a huge contract in the middle of your season, besides what it also does to your locker room and for your future offseason planning, that also factors into it.
So the other big trade, before we run down those free agency grades, the other big trade, Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I think I'm higher on this trade than Mike is, because Mike, you think Ryan is pretty toasty, and I think that he could definitely still have something left. But it is true that Indianapolis has caught itself in this kind of crazy cycle of a new old quarterback every year. I mean, they tried to build something by getting Wentz, but that clearly didn't work. So now this is the Phillip Rivers thing all over again. There's no future plan here. It's try to win the division and then hope something happens in the playoffs, and then try something again the year later.
And try something, and it becomes more expensive. And again, I know I'm on an island in terms of how washed I think Matt Ryan is. And I'm going to stand on that island. But like, no matter what, he's on the downside. He's going to be 38. They're already changing his contract around this, extending money to 2023, 2024. It's a short-term plan. And it's a short-term plan that, again, we saw that 2 years ago. Hey, it was great. I was arguing with Colts fans on Twitter. It's like, we won 11 games. That was a success. It's like, do you remember how that season with Rivers ended? With him throwing interceptions all over creation and the team falling off the pace and then kind of farting in the playoffs. That's the kind of thing you could be risking with Wentz, with Ryan this year and next year. And I don't necessarily see a lot of upside beyond that.
Yeah, well, it's like two different arguments, right? It's like the Colts don't have a plan. They keep, kind of lily padding from one, temporary thing to another. But in this case, I do happen to think that Ryan has a little bit more left than you might, Mike, and also that given where they were a week or whatever, 24 hours before they got Ryan, and where they are now, or at least, there's long-term planning, and then there's, let's get through this year with a good team and, try and compete. And why not? They did the best they could with the hand they kind of gave themselves, the crappy solitaire hand they dealt themselves. But, I give Chris Ballard credit for at least being agile enough to, pounce on the opportunity that was there to upgrade, because otherwise they were really in trouble. And, they're viable. And then in that division, obviously they have a good chance to host a playoff game. At this stage at the season where they were before getting Ryan, that's a pretty good place to wind up.
They took the Andrew Luck retirement and turned it into a 4-year emergency.
They really have. I mean,
operating
that
part
of it is
4 years.
I mean, you'd think at this stage by now, Jim Irsay himself would have, I don't know, he'd have gotten Arch Manning, the 18-year-old, just to come and play with us. And
is he available? CJ First Year says, if you are rebuilding like Atlanta, don't you need some scaffolding? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Screw the Falcons. No Falcons. I'm not talking about Falcons.
I would just say it's been between Ryan and Freddie Freeman's departure. It's been a rough week down here for Atlanta icons. You look at Trae Young now is all they have, and that's not necessarily something to grasp onto with both hands.
But you have who's the first baseman they signed instead of
Matt Olson, good player. I mean, by our analytics, sort of metrics-based analysis, they did the right thing. But on the other hand, they just won the World Series, and he's an icon, Freddie here. So it was a tough. People forget by July, as always, if Matt Olson has 30 home runs. But it was definitely a tough 1-2 punch for the two white icons of Atlanta. So I'll just say that.
Here we go.
Just saying.
All right.
I'm coming off the top rope today, baby.
Before we let that blow things up. All right, let's look at Mike's top 5 winners of the offseason so far. We actually have a graphic for this. Top 5 winners of the offseason so far. And in the grades, in the free agency grades, all these teams got A's. So let's start with the Buffalo Bills and how much you love their offseason. Our new AFC favorites, the Buffalo Bills.
Well, Von Miller, that's that. And we just kind of stop there. We can't really just stop there because it wasn't just Von Miller. It was re-signings. I think last show we talked about getting Isaiah McKenzie for peanuts.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, getting him to re-sign. Mitch Morse re-signed with them. They added Jamison Crowder. I think Jamison Crowder in place of Cole Beasley is a net positive in terms of the slot guy and what the slot guy is going to be capable of. The other slot guy. We're at the point where we're talking about the other slot guy in the Buffalo Bills offense. And just top to bottom, it is so difficult to sort of sharpen the spear point when you're at the Buffalo Bills level and legitimately improve when so many teams are backsliding. And that's what they did in this offseason.
The only thing I would worry about with them is losing Levi Wallace, affecting their cornerback depth. Right. But if they lived without Tre'Davious White for a half a season, they can get Tre'Davious White back and live without Levi Wallace. And they can draft someone, and that can give them depth.
Picked up O.J. Howard, too, right? That was a nice little under-the-radar buy that gives them another depth hole. I mean, they can throw to 2 guys at the same position at every position. It's pretty impressive.
Tampa Bay gets an A. How much credit did you give them for Tom Brady unretiring? Because both Tom Brady retiring and Tom Brady unretiring are off-season moves.
They are off-season moves, and it's a ton. And I guess they do deserve actual credit for waiting and keeping that money set aside and not going out and trading and going out and pursuing Deshaun and let's just wait and see. And they did, and everything came up roses. And then they get Carlton Davis back, sort of as a result. They make the trade for Shaq Mason. And now we're at the point, and I was going to save this joke for the Patriots part, where, Shaq Mason gets traded away from the Patriots so he can win a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. Leonard Fournette uses the Patriots as a leverage negotiating tool so he can get more money to go back and win a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. We are through the looking glass here. But the Buccaneers, overall, again, they're losing guys. And one of the things I tried to keep in mind when I did the grades is there's a lot, like Aaron said at the beginning of the show, a lot of free agents in the wind right now. A lot of Dominican Sue and Jason Pierre-Paul and Honey Badger, and all these guys are still in the wind. A lot of them are going to be gone. A lot of them, there's not going to be the money left when it happens. But the Buccaneers have done an outstanding job keeping the Brady core together in a conference, which you'll see, Joey Sucks, when we get to the bad grades, where the conference where a lot of the other contenders kind of fell off the back end.
Yeah, it was a genius move by the Buccaneers to send Bruce Arians off into a quiet corner and not let him screw it up somehow when Brady was thinking about coming back, and to say, we welcome you with open arms, baby. Come on back. Always forget.
Your top 2 off seasons definitely could be our Super Bowl matchup.
It could be.
I mean, Buffalo and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is now second in the NFC.
Are they the favorites in the NFC?
I thought they were favorites last I looked, but I could be wrong on that.
Plus 350 Tampa Bay Buccaneers to reach the Super Bowl, to win the NFC.
They're the favorites in the NFC right now.
Yeah.
Yep. And Buffalo is the favorites in the AFC. But it's now Happy National Cheesesteak Day, says Todd Singer.
I have not yet celebrated. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. This is when somebody reminds me it's Ash Wednesday and I have to run and put something on my forehead before my mom.
You have to put cheesesteak on your forehead.
Yes, a little cheesesteak cross on my head and then the rest of cheesesteak in my mouth. Thank you for reminding me, Todd.
Philadelphia will not, I believe. They're not one of the NFC teams on the bottom 5. Cincinnati is in the top 5. The rest of the top 5 is the AFC, because the AFC has stomped all over the NFC.
Unbelievable.
It's remarkable in this offseason. It is incredible how much talent has gone either from bad AFC teams to good AFC teams like Deshaun Watson, or from NFC teams to AFC teams like Devontae Adams.
Is it at the point of the 80s where the NFC was so dominant for that long stretch, and we saw them, 49ers, Giants, Cowboys, et cetera, just stomp all over AFC
My
teams?
guess is that the top couple of NFC teams will be competitive with all those AFC teams, but the middle of the conferences, there's a huge difference.
Massive, yeah.
Right now, there's a huge difference between the 8th, 9th, 10th teams in the AFC and the 8th, 9th, 10th teams. I mean, imagine if the Patriots were in the NFC East, or the Dolphins. Imagine if the Patriots or the Dolphins were in the NFC East right now instead of the AFC East.
Absolutely. By the way, quick prop for you: Dolphins plus 160 to reach the playoffs. Dolphins at plus 160 to reach the playoffs after the Tyreek Hill.
That is lower than 50%.
I know, that's unusual. I'm surprised.
It's interesting. It's interesting because the problem is, look at who they're competing with: Denver,
so much wild card depth,
and the Chargers, and the Ravens with an easier schedule, and which is not as easy as it looked because now Cleveland has Deshaun Watson, but an easier schedule and all those players coming back from injury, and all the AFC West teams, and Cincinnati and Cleveland, and, well, let's be honest, the AFC South is going to put one team in the playoffs, whoever wins the division. But that's an interesting, I don't know what our projections will say. I don't know if our projections will have Miami going to the playoffs 50% of the time.
I don't know. It's an interesting prop.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play a playoff prop on, March 24th, but it crossed my radar, certainly.
So Cincinnati, Robert, we've got you here. L. Collins, huge, so obvious, that it needed to be done. Perfect match for Cincinnati. Because if there's any lineman that they were going to have hope that lineman could improve, it would be Jonah Williams at left tackle. So they've left Jonah Williams, and they've just filled 3 other offensive line spots, improved at 3 other offensive line spots.
Yeah.
So
it didn't break the bank.
Yeah,
it didn't break the bank to do it. I mean, they gave Alex Kappa and Ted Karras decent contracts, but hardly anything that's going to make your eyebrows shoot up out of your head. And then Lyle Collins, as you mentioned, the actual details kind of just got released today, and they are extremely favorable to the Bengals. A lot of it based, as you would hope, given Collins' injury history and also history of shenanigans, shall we say. It's based a lot on, his snaps and his games played. So they protected themselves there. And if he's on the field for the entirety of the season or anywhere close, that's obviously a massive upgrade over what they've been trotting out at right tackle. I mean, they haven't had a good right tackle really since Willie Anderson. I mean, they've had a lot of Andre Smiths and Bobby Hart and, just kind of garbage. And last year in the Super Bowl, they were forced to play a street free agent swing tackle who they but is not nearly anywhere close to the level of a Collins. So obviously now they have a structure in place. They'll probably move Jackson Carman, who they drafted in the 2nd round last year, over to left guard and give him every opportunity. Probably give him a battle with Dante Smith, another 2nd-year guy. And maybe bring back Quentin Spain, who played well at left guard last year. So, three-headed challenge in camp, and the other 4 positions are set. Obviously, it's 10 times better than what they came into last year.
You expect Karras to play center, not to play left
For the moment, yes, I do. Barring something happening like a Tyler Linderbaum slipping the 31st pick where the Bengals choose and they get him, but that's the thing. Karras can move over, and you have that flexibility too. There was a possibility that if they didn't get a center and just got another guard, they would leave themselves that big hole in the middle, and then they'd have to be praying that Linderbaum fell to them, or go back, to a Trey Hopkins, who they didn't necessarily want to do that either. So it worked out really well. They got flexibility. They got guys who can play multiple positions, and they got what Frank Pollock, the offensive line coach, likes to call glass eaters, guys who are super tough and are from winning programs for the most part. That's what they like to have in Cincy, and that was a big part of the culture change that brought them to the Super Bowl last year. And, I feel like not that they're going to go back necessarily, but they've put themselves in a position to certainly compete again.
Lost. Okay, we'll take this from Bill Houston. A tangential Bengals question. Take this quickly. Rob, do you feel the Super Bowl was fairly officiated?
Of course not. It was a giant rook job from start to finish, and the Bengals
that uncalled blatant pass interference was really
it was fairly officiated in that it was officiated poorly on both sides. You want to go that way?
There is a little orange dot on the map of the United States of people who actually think that. Just so you know, just a tiny orange little.
Yeah, I will say to Bill Houston, I do not think this is like Super Bowl 40.
Right.
Where a lot of people who are not fans of the two teams thought the officiating was weird. I think most people, I think that the couple of questionable calls on the Bengals late sort of are canceled out by the lack of the offensive pass interference on T. Higgins, and it ends up being pretty equal.
And to the point that we were just discussing, when I close my eyes at night and visit the demons of just barely losing the Super Bowl, and that'll stay with me forever, what I think back to is the last play when Jamar Chase broke wide open and Joe Burrow, with just another second, half a second to be able to throw and keep Donald off of him, would have thrown the game-winning touchdown pass in perfect, in a perfect way to the rookie that made the team go, Jamar Chase, and that would have been the thing that got them the Super Bowl. And he didn't have that half second, which is why they spent so much went after these guys on the line for free agency. But I don't think about the Logan Wilson call, and I don't think about the T. Higgins non-call. That balanced it out. It wasn't about the officiating. There you go.
All right, Mike's fourth A. He gives 5 A's. The Los Angeles Chargers. Khalil Mack.
Your boy J.C. Jackson coming out of the Patriots. Sebastian Day. Most of these are a little bit older because they kind of hit early in free agency. They added Gerald Everett. They added a tight end who is a pretty good all-purpose tight end, and I think is a good fit for a team that not going to have a lot of balls to go around to their tight end. Just a nice little pickup. The Chargers just sort of keep on winning in the offseason here and doing the things they have to do to take that big next step while they still have Herbert on the rookie contract. Yeah,
they have a ton of talent. I mean, they're sort of Rams-esque with the team they share their building with, and the difference is, they didn't have to mortgage a ton really to get these guys.
They are so clearly, to me, the most likely team to go from out of the playoffs to into the playoffs.
Yeah,
makes sense.
I mean, their DVOA was high and not as high as Seattle, but Seattle got rid of players and the Chargers just added a bunch. So
you would put them ahead of the Ravens, even with that division being
that division, and I feel like the Chargers, the additions that they've made this offseason, are really good. Denver, speaking of the AFC West, your 5th A is Denver.
Yep.
Because look, when you can go out and get a quarterback as good as Russell Wilson, you do it.
You do it. You get Russell Wilson. By the way, minus 150 for the Chargers to make the playoffs. And again, not to belabor Denver, because I think we talked about the Russell Wilson. I think we've all had a chance to get, kind of digest that. You had Randy Gregory as well. You had DJ Jones as well, who is a heck of a player. You bring back some guys as well. You're bringing back Josie Jewell. You're not giving up a lot. You didn't give up that much in terms of draft capital, et cetera, necessarily to get Russell Wilson. Obviously, you had to get out of the first round. Overall, just a very solid offseason, a very necessary offseason for a team that's been stuck in neutral for so many years.
Yeah, God forbid. They haven't had a good season since 2015. As Tony Soprano's mother would say, for you. But, the overall point is definitely true. And we've talked about this before. If you can get Russell Wilson, we'll talk about it when we have the least the bottom 5 off seasons. But if you could trade for Russell Wilson, that's a home run in and of itself. Everything else they did certainly was gravy after that.
Hey man, the Bengals were pretty good 2013, 2014. You can't get nasty about a team. Oh, your last season was 2015. You were good back then.
Hey, listen, you'd think that from the Broncos fans that it's been since they were in the AFL the last time they were unbelievable, the caterwauling that goes on.
Vertical striped socks, baby. Vertical striped socks. Rob, do you have a team that you particularly liked their offseason that did not make Mike's top 5?
Well, I mean, listen, he did it before Tyreek was definitely traded to Miami. I don't know if that would have affected it, but you have to put the Dolphins in there too. And even the team that didn't get Tyreek. The Jets, I like what the Jets did quite a bit. Part of it was grabbing my boy CJ Uzama, next to be seen as a co-host of Good Morning Football. He may not even make a catch from Zach Wilson. He'll just go right to the broadcast booth, but he's a heck of a good guy, heck of a personality. And in case Uzama doesn't do anything particularly on the field, they also signed Tyler Conklin on top of him. So they got a couple of tight ends out of nowhere, just, giving Zach some comfort level, because I feel like he plays far too out of control. Obviously, he's a rookie, but he definitely is a guy. You look at him and the way he plays and say to yourself, there's a guy who needs some binkies, a guy who needs somebody who can just dump it to without trying to extend the play for 30 or 40 minutes like he tries to do on every play. So that'll help them a lot. And they, re-signed some guys that they like interior wise. And obviously Miami, going back to them, I mean, the Armstead Hill 1-2 punch kind of out of nowhere here this week is obviously great. It'll depend a lot on whether Armstead stays healthy or not. I think a lot of teams were questioning that, which is why his market didn't quite develop the way they thought it might. But, you can't argue with the talent upgrade that they have now in Miami. And as we all know, all excuses are off the table now for Tua. I think they probably know that, they're already going to be looking for a quarterback probably next year. But, listen to it. If you can't make it happen with those guys, you can't make it happen at all. So
I will emphasize Teddy Bridgewater was above average last year by DVOA and had a one of the highest in the league average depth of target.
Right.
Not only was he better than you think he was, he played a different game than he had played in the past. Mm-hmm. He don't sleep on the idea that Bridgewater could become the starting quarterback and get that ball downfield the hill.
Yeah, I think that's why. And he's like the perfect backup because he's kind of ego-free, as I've had.
He does seem to be not a dick.
He's not a dick. He's a great kid. I've met him a couple of times. He's a really good guy. And
Teddy Bridgewater seems to be a pretty good guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. It's not a dick. There's your.
There's our comment. Player comment for Pro Football.
Right, exactly.
Almanac 2022.
Teddy Bridgewater, higher depth of target, and not a dick.
And not a dick.
And there we are. We're talking about two more AFC teams, by the way.
Oh, yep. Yeah. Two more AFC teams. Let's talk about the bottom five. Now, I'm going to put a little asterisk on the bottom five, which is that I put this graphic together before the Tyreek Hill trade, and you dropped Kansas City's grade to a D. So Kansas City, it should be like the bottom six, and Kansas City should be the one AFC team on here. Yeah. But let's talk about the talent drain from the NFC. Bottom five off seasons are the bottom five off seasons are all in the NFC.
Starting with the Atlanta Falcons, a talent drain, and it's tricky because it's like, am I dinging the Falcons for the last 3 years of things that they were doing with Matt Ryan, not getting a replacement, not a viable alternative at quarterback, extending his contract? Am I really like grading them for all of that? And the answer is yes. Yes, I am. That's part of the deal here. You have to sort of coherently put your team together. Atlanta has done a couple things like pretty well. I mean, they bring back Cordarrelle Patterson, which I think is a nice little move. But the best thing you can say about the Falcons right now is that they are preparing, not rebuilding, because I mentioned it earlier. They're not rebuilding. They're preparing to rebuild. They're a year away from rebuilding because they have to clear cap space. They've got to get rid of some of these veterans, and they pretty much have to let time elapse.
Yeah, why they did stuff like re-sign Eric Harris, a 32-year-old safety, to a one-year deal. Like, they're not in the position to be re-signing 32-year-old players to one-year deals. Like, those players should be playing for other teams.
They're a year away from being a year away. That's their main issue right now. So
I'll interrupt here with a couple of comments on teams that didn't make our bottom five or our top five. CO the Legend says, I like Tennessee's acquisitions of Robert Woods and Austin Hooper. They're not earth-shattering moves, but they may have improved at both positions.
Yes.
I absolutely agree that Woods is an improve on what they got from Julio Jones last year.
Yep.
Watcher Nader says, why do you think the Steelers are keeping Devin Bush, but they cut Joe Schobert? Do they think Bush played better or other reasons?
I think so.
Cash money, too. Isn't it?
Okay.
They save a lot more when they
Bush is still on a rookie contract, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they like his upside. I think as mistake prone as he has been, you can see the athleticism there, and they probably value him differently than those of us who kind of watch the games value him.
Yeah, they traded up, which they hardly ever do, to get Bush in the first round, and he was good as a rookie, and then he tore up his knee, and not everybody comes back immediately and becomes the same player they were. So give the guy a little bit of a break there, and Schobert is a journeyman. They had overpaid, so they got rid of him and put the salary cap dough somewhere else. Easy move.
The Steelers always get a benefit of the doubt when it comes to linebackers. Maybe not how other things, but they get a benefit of the doubt for linebackers. So we'll trust them on this.
No question.
All right, bottom 5 off seasons. We did Atlanta. Let's do Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah. Okay. So you brought back Zach Ertz. You brought back Connor. You lose a lot of your tertiary guys. You lose your Christian Kirks. Obviously you lose Chandler Jones. What's the plan? What's the momentum here for the Arizona Cardinals? And I didn't even take into account the fact that there's still Kyler Murray smoke out there. That doesn't make any sense. It's just I don't know what this team is doing. They kind of spun their wheels. They've lost some of the guys that make themselves special offensively. They didn't make any kind of groundbreaking moves on either side of the ball. And it's one of those teams that the reason why they don't get criticized more is because they have a smaller fan base and cut a smaller media pool, so we don't talk about them very much.
Yeah, they're out in the desert, sort of cast away from the mainstream there. Right. Here's one for you. What if we need one more blockbuster trade? What about 2 quarterbacks, similar styles, both the contract impasses? So we think Kyler Murray goes to Baltimore for Lamar Jackson. Oh.
What are the Cardinals throwing in with Murray there?
Yeah, they got it. I don't know.
Quite a bit, I think.
Maybe as the offensive coordinator, I guess. But
and one's at a contract impasse. The other one has forgotten to check their email and start talking about the contract.
He doesn't even know. A contract. Yeah. What's the contract?
I'll get around to that.
We'll figure that out. Trust. But I do think that that there is some potential for Lamar not making it to a second contract in Baltimore. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Minnesota Vikings with a D.
Controversial, I suppose. And it's like part of it is you extend Kirk Cousins, and I think people are like, "Oh, here we go with the Kirk Cousins slander." You extended Kirk Cousins. You're doing the Matt Ryan thing. Vikings fans, you are doing the Matt Ryan thing with Kirk Cousins, except Matt Ryan was a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins. Okay. That's where it starts. Then you had all these, like the goal of the offseason with the new regime coming in was we're going to clean house a little bit. There are all kinds of contracts with 30-something-year-old players that have been extended too far, and it's time to start moving on from that. Right away with Daniel Hunter, you were trying to get an extension with him. It didn't work. You just ate the salary. And okay, Hunter's a heck of a player, so you eat his salary. You can't get that done. You take Thielen. You extend Thielen. I don't think that's a terrible move, but like you're talking about a 30-something-year-old wide receiver. He's your wide receiver too. You're now pushing problems into 2023, 2024. And then you bring in Zadarius Smith, and it's like now you're adding 30-something. You brought Hicks in early. You brought in Hicks at linebacker.
These moves look a lot more like it's still Rick Spielman.
Yes.
Than they do like we hired a new GM who's a hot young analytics kid, and he's going to restart there's no restart here.
Right. It's like we're stuck in this. We have to keep doing this for a while to stay competitive. I mean, for Cousins, it was like we got to free up some money so we have flexibility. And it's a quarterback, so it's okay. All right. Why are you bringing in Zadarius? Why have you not come up with some kind of solution? Trade Hunter. You just saw what Khalil Mack got. Hunter could get you some picks. Pick up the phone, make a trade for him. Instead, you eat the salary. It's just. I think they think they're competing. I think they looked at that big F up there under Green Bay and said, let's give it a shot. But
I don't think there's any doubt. They do think that. Yeah.
Then no, that's bad Vikings, bad.
I had to remind myself that Zimmer wasn't even the coach anymore. It's almost, you see them, everybody's mocking him a cornerback in the first round and how they're going to get guys who are going to do double A gap blitzing and everything's the same. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought they changed their whole operation there in the front office, but apparently not.
No, they're extending contracts and adding 30-somethings.
Yeah, it's all the same. It's weird.
Would Joey Sucks asks, would getting rid of Kirk Cousins have lowered or raised the Vikings grade?
I don't know.
Sort of depends what they got for him and how that would work.
Right. Did you dump him for like the 5th overall pick or something? That's like, I would call that a win. You did some goofy thing where you got Baker Mayfield and a pick where it's like, oh, we can jujitsu things around. Well, yeah, maybe if you did a Matt Ryan thing for you, I don't know. I'd have to see it to grade it.
Dallas Cowboys get a D. Yeah, boy, they hit the salary cap wall, didn't they?
Big D.
Yeah, they aimed for it.
Yeah.
And okay, I don't really know what happened with Gregory. It sounds like they got outbid at the last minute for Gregory, and Gregory's agent threw a smoke bomb down and said, "Oh, this is about character and stuff like that." But you're getting outbid for guys, okay? And the Cowboys are a team that should have been doing what the Rams are doing, what the Buccaneers are doing. There's no tomorrow. Go. This is a short window. We've got this group of guys. Instead, they've gone the opposite direction. You lose Gregory, you lose Cooper, obviously, you lose second tier guys like Cedric Wilson. So there doesn't seem like any rhyme or reason.
As of right now, their third receiver is Noah Brown.
Right, yeah. Special teams ace. It's like Noah Brown, the Mac Hollins, Trent Sherfield of the Dallas Cowboys, and again, this should be simple. It should be like the Tennessee Titans. This division is pretty easy. Let's put ourselves in position to win it. We could probably be a high seed in the playoffs, and then we can make things happen. And instead, they're kind of going the other direction.
Yeah, they feel a little bit like the Vikings without the thought that the Vikings still have to compete with Aaron Rodgers. It's like they think they're they can just win this division by throwing a couple of contracts extensions and just running back what they have. And really, it's Dallas who has that opportunity, and they just seem to be in a fog of their own making. They don't seem to have any plan for what they want to do. And I guess you can make an argument for some of those moves, obviously, and you can even make the argument that getting rid of Collins and putting Terrence Steele, a younger player, in there makes some sense. And all in a vacuum, some of them make sense. But the big picture, they tied themselves.
And yet they're still the favorites in that division.
Yeah, they are still, and they have big contracts that they regret, and they're trying to get out of it, but not in a coherent way.
Oh, by the way, Brian Schottenheimer has just joined the coaching staff in a Dwight Schrute role as assistant to both of the running and passing game coordinators. So yeah, they brought and Jeff Schwartz was joking. So what does Mike McCarthy do again? What's his role? He's but now with 100% more Brian Schottenheimer on the coaching staff.
That always goes well.
It always helps. Yeah.
All right, let's finish up with Green Bay. In walkthrough, you gave each of these teams grade, not only an overall grade, but a grade for whether they improved the roster, whether they used resources well, and whether they had a coherent plan. And your listing for Green Bay for coherent plan was F all the minuses on earth.
Yes. So say goodbye to Devontae Adams. Say goodbye on the offensive line to Billy Turner, who happens to be another Aaron Rodgers BFF. Okay. I always lose track of the other guy, Lucas Patrick on the offensive line. Say goodbye to him. Say goodbye to Zadarius Smith, who was not really a contributor in 2021, but somebody you would like to have as a contributor so it weakens your edge rush situations. You extend Preston Smith, the older and less accomplished of the two guys. Yeah. Right, to try and make ends meet. They did a couple of things right. They got Robert Tonyan back. Hopefully he's healthy, etc. But I guess here's my question. Has anyone heard from Aaron Rodgers on all this? This is... he
apparently he knew that Devontae Adams was possibly going to get traded when he signed his extension. He knew, according to reports.
This is a guy who could go on Patrick McAfee and Rogan and all these other podcasts and give us the I'm still excited about the direction we're going in, and I knew it was happening, and I realized that he could do anything.
He has not done any of that.
So guess what? Guess what?
What does he like to say? The grass is greener where you water it, and not only did the Packers turn on the water, but they flooded all of Lambeau Field and cast out everybody who got washed away.
It really is when you're close to a Super Bowl, you don't want to be losing players like Devontae Adams.
Right.
It's like they're at a certain point, especially when you feel like you have a 1 to 2 year window, and let the salary cap of 2025 be damned.
Yes, take care of itself. That's what the Rams are doing. That's what the Buccaneers are doing. That's kind of what you have to do. And I think that is what they want to do with Adams, at least. I think the plan was we can't keep Zadarius. That's going to be the sacrificial cut. We move on. We're going to get Adams to extend. And when that fell apart, but they were left in this nether region now where all the money's invested in Rodgers. Rodgers, let's face it, is going to be really miffed about this. The draft capital is going to have to go to receiver. And you're looking at a conference where they're falling behind. They're just falling behind in the conference period.
Yeah. I guess the only good news is that they are in the NFC and they still only have to get around a couple of teams, right, and they're not completely overwhelmed by their opposition.
I got to watch your 6 a little bit with the 49ers. Maybe I'm being a homer. You got to watch your 6 a little bit with the Philadelphia Eagles, depending on how the draft goes. I
don't think that's in doubt. Well, listen, you still have Rodgers.
You still have Rodgers.
Do they get Marquez Valdez?
Right. In their division, I feel like, listen, unexpected things happen all the time. Right. But I still feel like in their division, Green Bay goes in as very clear favorites.
Oh, gosh, yes. Let me look at the odds for that real quick. Division winner, I'm guessing it's going to be about minus 200 or something like that. Minus 175 Green Bay Packers. But that's it. It's winning the division, and then you get into the playoff tournament. And it's like, by then they'll know who their receivers are. Okay, let's see. Let's find out.
But that'll bring me to nicely if you want to ask me the teams that are not mentioned above, and these are clearly all correct. But I just felt like both Chicago and Detroit, especially Chicago, with a quarterback in his second year, looking to maybe, get that sort of Joe Burrow-esque bounce from the team. The Bears could have done a lot more than they did. They didn't seem to really have the urgency around a quarterback of that nature, and the situation they find themselves in with, the Packers in free fall and the Vikings doing whoever knows what the Vikings are doing. It's almost like they had an opportunity to step in and be that surprise team, and they didn't really grasp it. Maybe internally they think more of their players than we do on the outside, but I just felt like there was especially with Larry Ogunjobi failing his physical, that hurt them too. Guy that they thought was going to be an anchor to their defensive line, but just in general, I just thought that they a little too quiet. There's still time to do stuff, and obviously the draft, but the Bears and of course Seattle. We mentioned it before. I know it makes sense. You want to say, let's rebuild and do it now, but a guy like Russell Wilson just is so difficult to replace. I just don't see them competing without falling ass backwards into another third round quarterback like Russell Wilson in the future. You can say they had to do it, but I would have done everything it took to keep him.
My offseason that I hate is the Patriots. Not because they didn't add anybody, because I'm used to the Patriots not adding anybody until late in free agency, but because of who they subtracted. Right? I'm upset about J.C. Jackson leaving. They do not have a reasonable replacement for him at all. And I'm upset about the Shaq Mason trade. Yes, it saves you salary cap money, but that is a really, really good offensive lineman you just got rid of for a low pick.
For nothing.
Yeah, it's not. I didn't want it to be like last year where they signed a bunch of dudes. Like that was shocking last year. That's not normally how it works. But I would have liked to have not seen the departures, especially the Shaq Mason trade.
Well, and also it wasn't the whole point of kind of when we went through the Steph Gilmore deal where they got rid of him. Why are they doing that? Well, they have J.C. Jackson. Give him the money, right? And then they don't do that either. It's sort of like Belichick is saying, I can turn anybody into an all-pro cornerback, and maybe he can, but it just
the talk is they're going to play a lot more zone and try to depend more on the pass rush. And what pass,
right?
The same pass rushers they had last year, which is Matt Judon was good, but
and they're bringing back guys, bringing everybody back, and bringing Malcolm Butler back and Trent Brown back, and
Malcolm Butler back. I would be surprised if Malcolm Butler doesn't even make the team. That's one of those things where you write a story about it in late March, and then at the end of August, they release the final 53-man roster, and he's not on it, and you just forget about it.
And then he signs with the Broncos and plays with Russell Wilson, and there's another story. And then
that'd be a great story, actually.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
One more question from Bill Houston: thoughts about Allen Robinson going to the Rams? Here's my thought. Listen, I know Allen Robinson has a ton of talent. I know what he did in the past with bad quarterbacks. But last year, with a not bad quarterback, but a unexperienced rookie, let's say, he was awful. Yeah. Like it's not like last year you can chalk last year up to Justin Fields because in the past Allen Robinson had great quarterbacks.
Right.
Like he always was good despite bad quarterbacking. And then last year he was terrible. He looked awful. I know Matt Harmon's reception perception, he thinks that Robinson still has it and that the problem was just that they didn't get him the ball. But every time I watched Chicago. He just didn't look like he was open at all. I would not be shocked if Robert Woods has a better year than Allen Robinson.
Well, I mean, I do think he mailed it in a little bit out of frustration. Yeah. I feel like he's in a situation now where he's not looked upon as a guy who has to be the number one.
Well, he certainly will not mail it in now. He's in a Super Bowl champion.
So, that hot poker is up the rear end of a lot of guys. And, I guess it depends on your expectations. Like, to me, he's in there to be, a clear number 2 and to fulfill the Odell role. If you get anything beyond that from him, then it's gravy. I don't know that you will. I'm with you. I don't think he's some kind of budding superstar, even in LA, but he obviously has a good quarterback and a good team around him, and they're not going to ask him to do a ton, and they'll probably get some more receivers in there, and, he'll be just another piece, and he'll make a big play here and there. And, if that's all LA's looking for, then it's a success, but they're not, necessarily getting the Allen Robinson of 3 years ago. That's for sure.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, that does it for the show. Thank you to Mike. Thank you to Rob. Thank you to everybody watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe on whether you're watching on Twitch or Facebook or YouTube or listening afterwards on the podcast network. Let people know about the show. Let people know you like the show. Like and subscribe to the show. Don't forget Tuesday at 1 p.m., the draft show with Mike and Derek Klassen, 1 p.m. Eastern. Next Thursday, more free agency, and we'll see what trades happen in the next week. I'll be on vacation, but Mike will have you with Brian Knowles and some other folks. So
only 2 o'clock.
What?
Plenty of time. It's only 2 o'clock in the East. Plenty of time.
Plenty of time for another big trade today, actually.
Make it happen. Lamar for Kyler. You're here.
All right. Thank you all for listening and watching, and we will see you next week. Take care, everybody.